our regular meeting of the Board of Town Council of the town of Black Mountain. And if good, let's rise and pledge allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And this evening, we are pleased and honored to have our Fire Chief, Scotty Harris, is going to deliver our invocation for us.
Yes, please. Dear Heavenly Father, we come to you tonight, ask for your guidance, watch over us as the town conducts their business to provide service to the citizens. We ask that you lead and guide us in decision-making processes. Be with our citizens, be with our members of the town council, be with the public. We work through these challenges ahead of us, Lord, in your name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Scotty. Thank you very much. Seated. I do have one announcement this evening, and it comes in the form of a statement that Steve Woody, who is the CEO and Executive Director of Unopened Health, offered. And we've been with Steve numerous times, Josh and a group of folks who have worked in transition on the Unopened on our infrastructure project over the last couple of 2 or 3 years. But Steve offered this statement, and this is for the town, and we'll, if we could, Savannah, we'll get this recorded in the minutes. Just a statement on the timing of the Unopened building, the development, and where they are in their process of obtaining capital from a public offering and so forth, and further capital development. Obviously, 2020 was a difficult year with COVID and our IPO, that's initial public offering delay. The impact to Unopened was pretty straightforward. It limited the capital that the company needed to grow and launch 2 of the new products we had ready to put on shelves in over 50,000 pharmacies, as well as other expansion plans. However, the company did pivot from a high growth focus to a profitability focus so that we reduced our need for outside capital. In doing so, we had our second and third best quarters in the history of the company, even though we couldn't call on hospitals or long-term care facilities or even some pharmacies. As we look to 2021, we still have some work to do to position the company for profitability and growth, but we are launching some new products in the physician office space and in the pharmacy space that will allow the company to grow in the second half of the year. So our goal is to position the company by the end of the year, end of 2021, for future growth and expansion as originally envisioned. Steve Woody, CEO and Executive Director of Unopened Health. So just wanted to offer that for the board and also for the public, and also mention that at the last board meeting of the board of the French Broad River MPO, that North Carolina Department of Transportation announced that they would be picking up the work on the Blue Ridge Road and I-40 exchange. And as you know, DOT over the past years had some cash flow issues just due to the pandemic and overall cost of construction and so forth. So they'll be picking back up work on the project, which dovetails pretty well with the scheduled right away in 23 and construction in 25, as does really the Unopened progress and so forth. So just wanted to offer that. And then it is my distinct honor and privilege, and Anne-Marie, Lisa, I'm so thankful that you could be with us this evening. But I'd like to read this proclamation honoring James E. Jim Levine. He's a good friend of mine and a lot of other people here in the room. And we wanted to offer this proclamation this evening, and so thankful that you all could be with us this evening. Whereas James E. Jim Levine, referred to hereinafter as Jim Levine, was a native of Buncombe County, and whereas Jim Levine taught and coached the students of Owen High School for many years, And whereas Jim Levine made a difference in countless students' lives by serving as athletic director of Owen High School, along with coaching football, wrestling, track, swimming, golf, and baseball. And whereas Jim Levine provided invaluable service to the Black Mountain community and served his country in the Army. And whereas Jim Levine was a loving husband to his wife of 62 years, Anne Marie, and father of Mark, Brad, and Lisa. And whereas Jim Levine was mentor, teacher, instructor, friend, and father figure for everyone that played under him, as well as everyone that had the opportunity to meet him. Now, therefore, I, Larry B. Harris, Mayor of the town of Black Mountain, on behalf of the Board of Aldermen and the citizens of Black Mountain, wish to honor him and do hereby proclaim February 8th, 2021 as Jim Levine Day. Signed this 8th day of February, 2021. I do have a question for you all. Wasn't Jim a Marine? He wasn't? Yeah. Okay, you gotta want to make sure it was correct. It does make a difference sometimes, doesn't it? Thank you. Let me sign this. Thank you. Glad you could be here. Thank you both. You both meant, both you and all the rest have meant a lot to a lot of folks in the room. Tim, Archie, do y'all care to say anything? Ryan, Ron?
Definitely. He
All of us.
He made a definite impact on my life.
Mine too. Love you.
Thank you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
He was referring to the change from Board of Aldermen to Town Council. I would like the town to hear it again during the meeting. Will you please read it so others will understand? Good evening, my name is Teresa Floor, living at 207 Rhododendron Avenue. In March of 2020, I presented the following during my opportunity to speak for 3 minutes. I never got any response, and I'm so happy to see this finally being addressed. Before moving to North Carolina, I had never heard the term alderman. My family has lived in towns where the personnel representing the town were called council members. I looked up the term alderman. It is defined as a member of a city legislative body and literally translates as old man in Old English. Even though many local municipalities in Western North Carolina still refer to themselves as Board of Aldermen, it's considered an outdated gender-specific term that many younger people don't recognize. Alderman was a term made back in the 1880s when no one dreamed a woman would serve office. With more women serving on town governing boards, the word alderman isn't representative of the modern times. Don't you believe we should change Black Mountain's legislative body to use the word council and council members? ? The word council has a great meaning of consultation and advice, which I believe our town should convey in the spirit of becoming a progressive town with non-gender titles. Vote yes to town council. Thank you for your time. This is from James A. Full and Courtney C. Halcomb. I have faith and trust in our own leadership and support staff that they will make well-informed and fair decisions going forward. My questions pertain to what the town will be thinking and doing. Buncombe County are going to do whatever they will do to balance the spending versus revenue, out of my control to input. As you know, they announced the huge 3-year assessment increases February 2nd of 2021. That follows the last 3-year large increases. Does the town have an ordinance or law which restricts the levy from being more than a certain percentage of the property value or assessment in any given year, tax year, ? A cap, ? If the town of Black Mountain leaves their levy the same as last year, then tax collected will increase by approximately 55% along with the assessment increases. Below is a spreadsheet table showing sample increases in assessment. The fair market value is highly questionable based on comp sales. I'm getting that info together as well as a current appraisal. So I'm asking the finance director, mayor, board of aldermen, will they decrease the levy such that the 2021 spending budget is essentially flat versus the prior year because revenue will increase in proportion to the tax base increase? The town has years of history maintaining a flat to decreasing levy as the tax base and revenue have risen. I do understand the town has added taxable property, new construction year over year, which has increased spending, but offset by increased property tax collections to achieve a balanced budget. Capital and operating costs to take trash and recycling in-house were a net reduction in spending versus Waste Pro contract. That's it.
Thank you. We now have a presentation from a group, Sunrise Owen, and this is Isabella Hale and Elsa Quam.
Hi, I'm Bella Hale. I'm a freshman at Nesbitt with Owen as my base school, and this is Elsa Quam, and she is a freshman at Owen. And we are from Sunrise Owen. It's a chapter of a social movement, Sunrise, for Owen high schoolers, but we're not connected to the school. Thank you for letting us come and present about Sunrise. Let us know if you have any questions throughout our presentation. I'm going to start off our presentation by explaining what Sunrise is, what we do, and why. Then Elsa will talk about some of our accomplishments on a local level and talk about our hub specifically. So what exactly is Sunrise? Sunrise is a movement started by young people to fight climate change and create good jobs for everyone. But you may still be wondering what exactly we do. So let me explain how we are organized into hubs and how we work as a collective movement. When creating this movement, the founders looked at data about building successful social movements, which we'll get more into later. But when setting up the structure of the movement, they came up with the movement's DNA, which says who we are and what principles guide us. This DNA consists of our principles along with unity and autonomy. The principles are the guidelines and beliefs that we follow, which we'll look at more in a second. But first, I'd like to show what unity and autonomy means for Sunrise. So for Sunrise, this means that we are one united movement with shared goals, but we have autonomy in that any three people can take action in the name of Sunrise, granted that they follow all of our principles while doing so. These groups of 3 or more people can start hubs, which are groups of Sunrisers, usually in the same city, county, or school, though there are some groups that coordinate across the country. They all follow Sunrise's principles and take the movement's DNA as their own, but work on different aspects of fighting climate change based on what they are interested in. So the picture on the right shows the latest data of where Sunrise hubs are around the country. There are more than 400 hubs in the US at the moment. And here is a map of North Carolina. Our hub, Sunrise Owen, is the one with the red mark on it. We have quite a few hubs in North Carolina. Some of the ones closest to us include Sunrise UNC Asheville, Sunrise Brevard, and Sunrise Chapel Hill and Carrboro. Now that there's a better sense of what Sunrise is, let's talk about the other part of our DNA. We spoke about unity and autonomy, which includes the movement and each part that makes it up, which are hubs. Now let's look at our principles, which make up the rest of our DNA. These 12 principles every member follows and uses to guide what we do. The first one says that we are a movement to stop climate change and create millions of good paying jobs in the process. Principle 2 says that we grow our power through talking to our communities. Principle 3 says that we are a movement from all paths of life. Principle 4 says that we are non-violent in word and deed. Principle 5 is that we tell our stories and we honor each other's stories. Principle 6 is that we ask for help and we give what we can. Principle 7 is that we take initiative. Principle 8 says that we embrace experimentation and we learn together. Principle 9 is that we take care of ourselves, each other, and our shared home. Principle 10 is that we unite with other movements for change. Principle 11 is that we fight for the liberation of all people. And lastly, we have Principle 12, which says that we shine bright. This is meant to show the optimism that we have in our movement. Okay, so you know how our movement setup looks like now, but why is it set up like this? So the Sunrise Movement is organized like this because of past social movements, using the data of Erica Chenoweth that says that movements succeed in achieving their goals with 3.5% of active public support, and that nonviolent movements are more likely to succeed than violent ones. 3.5% doesn't sound like a lot, but that's roughly 11 million people in the US. So we use the cycle of momentum established by others who studied social movements to try and boost public support by escalation of the problem to bring it to the public's eyes and absorption into the movement. So I've talked about what Sunrise is and does, but why are we doing this? So we are advocating for the climate crisis because we are facing a severe problem and we can't hope it goes away for it to get better. Even with immediate action, we can still feel the effects of it. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change wrote in a summary about their 2018 special report on global warming of 1.5 degrees that, quote, the report finds that limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius would require rapid and far-reaching transitions in land, energy, industry, buildings, transport, and cities. Global net human-caused emissions of carbon dioxide would need to fall by about 45% from 2010 levels by 2030, reaching net zero around 2050. This means that any remaining emissions would need to be balanced by removing CO2 from the air, end quote. Along with that, NASA has stated that, quote, even if we stopped emitting greenhouse gases today, global warming would continue to happen for at least several more decades, if not centuries, and that in the absence of major action to reduce emissions, global temperature is on track to rise by an average of 6 degrees Celsius, end quote. UN scientists also noted in 2019 that we have around 11 years to avoid catastrophic climate change. All of this information is serious. We are facing a serious threat. In different areas, we'll experience this 1.5 to 2 degrees of warming differently, which could cause worsening effects of severe droughts, flooding, fires, and many other complications, not to mention the effects on plant and animal life. NASA also notes that low-income areas and vulnerable populations will feel the effects worse and faster than others. The bottom line is that we need immediate action to avoid crossing the line of 2 degrees of warming, let alone the 1.5 degree mark. We need to get to net zero carbon by 2050 to avoid this, because even if we kept the global temperature increase to 2 degrees Celsius, we will still have depleted species, changed ecosystems, and many more people will have died from food and water scarcity and severe weather. So this is why Sunrise is fighting. So now that I've talked about the severity of the problem, how does Sunrise fight climate change? So let's circle back to the theory of change. We as Sunrise are a nonviolent movement that advocates for ending climate change through base building, which is expanding our hubs, building our support among the public, which is known as people power, fighting for political power by supporting politicians who share our values, and lastly, coming together as a collective with shared goals, which is known as people's alignment. We work to increase the support for people power, political power, and people's alignment to grow our movement and fight climate change. And so now we'll talk briefly about the Green New Deal, which is a plan that Sunrise supports. So on the screen, I have the 5 goals outlined in the plan, but I won't read the version in full. The Green New Deal is a plan that would have the US switch to 100% renewable energy over 10 years. The plan is modeled after FDR's New Deal during the Depression, but this time it acknowledges the disproportionate effects of climate change on low-income and vulnerable communities. The 14-page bill sets goals and projects that could be used to achieve those goals, but it isn't one specific bill. Bills would be passed that follow its goals to make action happen. The bill provides 5 goals. 1, to fairly transition to net zero greenhouse gas emissions. 2, that millions of high-wage jobs would be created and ensure economic security for all people of America. 3, to invest in infrastructure along with industry of America. 4, to secure life-sustaining resources for people of the United States. And 5, to repair, stop, and prevent oppression of marginalized communities. So this is not everything, but it is a start, and it shows the goals that we want to achieve. And here are my citations for the presentation, and we used carnival slides for the theme. And now I'll pass it over to Elsa Kwam, who will talk specifically about our hub.
Okay. So, hi, thank you guys so much for coming and listening. I'm going to be talking about our hub's accomplishments and also about about Sunrise as a whole's accomplishments. So now the first thing I'm going to be talking about is what our specific hub, the Owen hub, has accomplished. And we did a sidewalk protest right before the election. Our Sunrise hub did a sidewalk protest to spread awareness about how impactful and important the 2020 election would be to combat the effects of global warming. And then we also sent, during this year's presidential election and also during the Georgia runoff election, our hub sent postcards to registered Democrat voters to remind them to vote. Studies from postcardstовoters.com show that receiving a handwritten postcard is greatly increases the chances of people voting, especially if they have not voted in past elections. So we also hung up flyers in downtown Black Mountain. Bella Hale designed them, and a lot of businesses were kind enough to let them hang up the flyers, and some of them even still have them up. The photograph on this slide shows the flyers, and they say that we have 10 years, which is from a study that says we have 10 years before the effects of global climate change can be reversed, or not reversed, but yeah, reversed, that's the right word, sorry. So now I'm going to be talking about the Sunrise Movement as a whole's accomplishments. And this is obviously not going to be a complete list, but it's kind of the main big things that we have done. So the Sunrise Movement was founded in 2017, and during the 2018 midterm elections, they worked to out candidates who accepted donations from fossil fuel and oil companies. Accepting donations from oil companies is often very problematic because it makes candidates much less likely to make meaningful change and pass regulations to prevent oil and coal companies from causing so much pollution. In November of 2018, a group of 250 members of the Sunrise Movement held a sit-in at the Speaker of the House Pelosi's office to demand that Democratic members of the House would no longer accept donations from fossil fuel companies and to pressure Pelosi to work towards a consensus in the House to begin Green New Deal legislation when Democrats had the majority in the House and Senate. So the Wide Awake campaign. In the summer of 2020, the Sunrise Movement began performing wide awake demonstrations, where a group of protesters would gather outside a politician's house and make noise very early in the morning. These, some politicians that have been targeted are Mitch McConnell, Ted Cruz, Betsy DeVos, and Larry Hogan. Wide Awakes are inspired by a movement that took place in the 1800s, in which young people did nearly the same thing as these modern protests, but to protest slavery and injustice in America. So the photograph on the right is a picture of a wide awake that took place this summer targeting Tom Tillis, who is a senator from North Carolina, and the one on the left is one that took place in the 1860s. So the climate mandate campaign. In late 2020, the Sunrise Movement began their climate mandate campaign by putting pressure on Joe Biden to pick a climate cabinet that would work towards Sunrise's goals, such as the Green New Deal, and pushing for Biden to establish the Office of Climate Mobilization. So, what can you do? First off, try to think green and show your support for businesses who are trying to become better for the environment. Also, support projects in the town that will make Black Mountain more green. Projects that can be helpful in making our town more green are things like greenways, more funding for community gardens, and public transportation. Also, we are aware that the Board of Aldermen is nonpartisan, and since Sunrise is a left-leaning movement, we understand if you are not able to show support. But we urge you to take climate change seriously, because no matter what your party is, it will affect you and the people you love. Thank you guys so much for listening, and if you have any questions, please let us know now, or you can contact us later. Here are our emails, personal email and our personal emails and the hub email. So thank you guys.
Elsa and Isabella, thank you so much. We appreciate you taking the time to share with us this evening, and in particular, your notation that we're a nonpartisan board. But nonetheless, these are very important issues, and we appreciate you taking time to share with us, but also the public, just what you're doing and your interest. And anybody on the board have a question or anything, comment for Isabella, and so forth. Thank you so much. Thanks for your time this evening. Great, and with that, we are ready for the Fire Department Annual Report and Chief Scotty Harris. Welcome, Chief.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Board. We'll go over a few things from slides that's occurred throughout the year and kind of where we're at as a department on the overall itself. The department was rated in 2019 as a Class 3. Currently, we encompass the rural district, which is our East Buncombe district, as well as the city limits. The city limits is approximately 7 square miles, with our East Buncombe district totaling 54 square miles between the joint venture between the two. Our call volume, 1,404 in the city, 680 in our rural area, for a total of 2,084 calls in the last year. With 492 of them being multiple calls, and what we mean by multiple calls is already being out on a call and being dispatched to a second call, whether it be a structure fire related call, whether we're on a medical call and having another dispatch come in while we're on that call, needing an additional crew to respond. Exposures versus losses based off the amount of structure fires that we responded to or call volumes. 50,776,000 was the exposure based off the tax value of the residents, and 295,350,000 is the estimated loss out of that response. On our COVID calls, which seems to be the hot topic, we had 107, which, and the way that's done is it's screened at the 911 center. Doesn't mean all those calls were positive, just mean when they answered the questions off the screening, then we were dispatched as a possible COVID call, meaning taking extra PPE precautions of how we respond to it, how many people we send inside to interact with the patient, and our dress level on that. So again, 107 over the past year. The month of January, this year, we've responded to approximately 30 calls that are COVID screened related calls this year. A little bit about our equipment. As you'll see in one of the slides, our regular duty wear. This is Firefighter Austin Edwards. In basic uniform wear, he weighs 156 pounds. Once you put all the gear on and what we carry into a high-rise structure, in the dorms at Montreat, Ridgecrest, with the equipment he's carrying in, he goes from 156 pounds to 317 pounds. We often get asked how much does the equipment weigh or what do we take with us and different things. It just gives you kind of visual of how much it changes, and it also show the importance of our physical fitness programs. The turnout gear itself for the PPE of self-protection, coats, pants, helmets, gloves, boots, and hood is approximately $4,000 cost. The air pack is approximately $3,000 itself. On the air packs, they have a 10-year life cycle. That'll be part of our CIP project for next year. They are coming up on that life cycle project, which would be a cost of approximately $250,000 to replace them. We did put in for a grant last year. We're not successful and have applied for a grant again this year to replace the air packs, and hopes of that will be successful to offset that cost. On our staffing, NFPA 1710, 1720 is the National Fire Protection Association, which governs the staffing for the career departments. It states that engine companies should be staffed with a minimum of 4 persons. Our current staffing is operating as 6 full-time between 2 stations with 1 part-timer. 116 days last year, we had only 2 people on an engine at Station 2. So again, the meeting of the standard for NFPA, National Fire Protection Association standard recommendation, is a minimum staffing of 4 and dropping down to 3 when need be. And that offsets the coverage of vacation time, sick time, things of that nature. So again, 116 days out of the 365 that we operated with 2 personnel on the engines at Station 2. And this goes over this is NFPA 1911 and 1901, our standard for fire apparatus, testing, inspection, and maintenance. Again, the National Fire Protection Association, which is our governing body, or one of the governing bodies for recommendation, talks about the life cycle and replacement schedule of apparatus with 10 to 15 years. Apparatus more than 15 years old due to safety upgrades should go to a reserve status and not be operated as the frontline apparatus. This is just a brief overview of some of our apparatus, and people think when you replace a fire truck that if you've got multiple fire trucks, you have plenty of. Each one of these trucks, and what the purpose of this is to show you that each apparatus serves as a different function, whether it be an engine, a tanker, or a rescue piece of equipment, or a brush truck. Each one of those responds to a different type of call and performs a different function on that call. So when we talk about fire trucks needing to be replaced, and you look in the building and see 10 trucks sitting there, the initial mindset is they have plenty of trucks. Why do they need something to be replaced? Well, each one of those perform a different function with a different crew on the dispatch, and that's the purpose of showing that breakdown on not the mindset of, oh, well, they got a fire truck. Well, each fire truck does something different. So we just want to show what the breakdown of that is. On our mutual aid calls, automatic mutual aid for a structure fire, we do get in a commercial building, we get Swan & Noah's ladder truck since we don't currently have a ladder. The picture on the right is come in as a commercial structure fire at Denny's. And you'll see there that Swan & Noah's ladder truck was used as an asset to access the roof of that. The other picture where a lot of people say, would you have no need for a ladder truck? That is a regular residential fire last month that was coming in as a chimney fire. As you can see, that's a tin roof with a steep pitch, a nightmare to safely access. That call was on Craigmont, so even in a rural setting, there is access for ladder trucks to be able to safely operate and make access to the chimney fire on that call. So again, you can see the difference there where most people's mindset is a ladder truck is only used on a high-rise building or a large commercial facility. This just shows that the roof structure, we were aided by Swananoa to be able to access the chimney fire call, as well as on the commercial structure for the ladder truck and show the need for those. This graph's kind of hard to see on the breakdown itself, but as you can see with the colors of the red, greens, and yellows, it goes over our apparatus and the replacement schedule using the 15-year cycle, with our oldest being a 1984 truck that should have been replaced several years ago, to our newest being a 2017. But again, that just goes through the cycle, as you can see where we're at in 2021 as far as apparatus and the replacement schedule using the NFPA's recommendation on a 15-year replacement cycle. What we did that is where it starts with the yellow, you see the 15-year mark. When we get to the red, that is our 20-year mark on replacement. And as you can see, we're in the red, the black, with the yellow there and beyond. Any questions? I'll be glad to take any questions that you may have or reiterate some of the topics that you saw covered on there.
Chief, I think it'd be nice for the public and the board to understand of the various calls that you respond to, and I guess what I'm getting at is accident on the highway, house fire in Black Mountain, house fire in our district, period, and mutual assist calls, and maybe there's other categories too that I'm leaving out, but just to sort of, give us a summary, if you would, of the various, of all those multiple calls, just how they get categorized and so forth.
It is broke down into categories, and I don't have that in the report. We got the total number in there, but the categories, for example, we do on a wide array of stuff. Yesterday, we had an injured hiker up on the Graybeard Trail up in Montreat. Obviously, you know what the weather conditions were like yesterday. Crews hiking in to take an ATV in to go and rescue and remove the victim there to bring them down to EMS. This morning, we were on Interstate 40 with a fuel leaking from a tractor trailer. So those are just some of the responses. Most people just think that fire only responds to a medical call or a house fire. There's a wide array there with those vehicles and assets of personnel. And we do get automatic aid and provide automatic aid with our other partners from in the valley, with Swananoa, Riceville, Broad River, Garin Creek, as well as receive mutual aid from the city of Asheville on our structure fire responses to provide a RIT company, the Rapid Intervention Team, which is there strictly to rescue a downed firefighter should something go wrong on that scene.
So Chief, does that mean if it's Broad River, Swananoa, did you say Garin Creek?
Garin Creek, we do
Garin
respond to
Creek.
them.
And Riceville. So if they have a call, we also respond to the call?
We also respond in
Right.
that area as well. As part of the mutual aid agreement for automatic aid responses, basically trying to put enough personnel on the scene for the initial attack
Right.
to mitigate the emergency as early as possible.
Right. Does that end up, if you categorize your calls for mutual aids, the bulk of your calls, or how, just, I know you don't have the numbers right in front of you, but do they comprise a high number of your calls?
I won't say the bulk, because the breakdown itself in the East Buncombe, 680 in our rural area and 1,404 in the town.
Uh-huh.
So the majority of our calls are within the jurisdiction city limits of the town, not in the East Buncombe area. Those other calls would be going to the mutual aid outside those jurisdictions.
Yeah, yep, great. Great, thank you.
Yes,
That's
sir.
very helpful.
All
Any questions for Scotty, Pam?
Thanks for coming, Chief.
Yes, ma'am.
Nice to see you.
All right.
Just a couple questions. Have
Okay.
our firefighters been offered vaccinations for the virus?
Yes, ma'am. We had, from our career staff as well as our volunteer staff, we did have several take the vaccine. I received the second dose on the 20th with no abnormal side effects. So obviously we do have some people that experienced the body aches that lasted about 24 hours, but everyone there was offered the opportunity to take it. We did have some take it, and some that have gone back since then and started the first dose after they've seen the other people go through the vaccine line and see what effects it did have.
Good. I also wondered, since we serve an area beyond the boundaries of Black Mountain, does Buncombe County chip in to help pay?
Yes,
for-
ma'am. In our East Buncombe Rural District, we have a tax rate there that is at this time 12 cent, and we receive approximately $900,000 toward the budget that goes through general fund to be reimbursed back to the fire department in that aspect of the general fund. So in our total overall budget, when you look at the budget itself, was about 1.7 last year, with about 900,000 of that coming from the county's East Buncombe Rural District.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yes,
Yeah,
ma'am.
they just pay, Pam, if it's if you're in the fire district, it comes in on your property tax bill and then gets reallocated out. And I suppose, the county's working on the budget. There was an increase, I think, in the fire tax the last couple of years, I believe. It was one year
It was
before.
approximately either 3 or 4 years ago, because it was prior to my arrival, they went up to 12 cents.
So it's been that long.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So I don't know where that stands this year. In the past, I think, maybe I'm thinking back to the year when it happened. The years passed by kind of quickly. But I was thinking that all the chiefs in the county, coordinated and met with the commissioners as in part of the budget process. And I'm curious if has been any discussion about that up to this point.
3 weeks ago, we'd had our first county budget meeting via Zoom. And that was some discussion when the county provided the guidance on when they will send out their recommendation of what the tax breakdown is going to be for revenues received. The departments will have an opportunity to determine whether they can stay at that same tax rate or whether they would be asking for a tax increase based off the revenue received,
Right.
Meeting the operational needs.
Right. So some of the information you've provided to us can also be provided, obviously in summary form, but, there are high demands
Yes, sir.
and the capital demands are pretty
Call-
significant.
Yes, sir, for call volume as well as staffing, as well as apparatus replacement schedule. And we did initiate a conversation with the county for partnership and joint venture. For example, if we go into the East Buncombe Rural District and build a new fire station, then is there offsetting costs where the county contributes as well as the town contributes to be able for that partnership with it being built in our East Buncombe district. So,
Great. Did you have some other questions, Pam? Anyone else?
I have a couple.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for being here.
Yes,
Thank you for the presentation. You mentioned that there were 116 days last year where you were understaffed with just two firefighters at one of the stations or one of those trucks. What was the reason for that? Is it just people on vacation and sick?
it can be sick, it can be vacation. Right now, currently, we're authorized 6 full-timers and 1 part-time staffing. So operating at 6, if one person takes off, whether it be for vacation or family emergency, anything else, you automatically drop down to 5 if you don't have a part-time schedule that day. So with our maximum staffing or our authorized staffing be at 6, it's challenging to operate, or not uncommon to see that number drop down to 5. So,
You didn't take that. Okay. So when you're understaffed like that, what does it actually mean as far as your ability to serve the community?
we still provide a level of service with getting the automatic aid, but also what that does is our initial arriving company, for example, at Station 2 operating with 2 people, if it were, the call came in at White Pine Drive at the townhome just before you get to the stop sign there, we've got less than a quarter mile respond. So if you're dispatched to a kitchen fire in that facility or in that residence, when you come off the truck, you've only got one person able to go in and fight fire just to gear it out, and we should be going in two out. So as you get there on that quick response, provided we were able to roll up with 3 people, we would at least be able to send 2 people in and start fighting fire immediately. And to where you can't send one person in by themselves for a safety reason, then you're delaying that fire attack method.
Well, Chief, and this is at Station 2.
Yes, sir. I
And
mean,
so,
because
you know,
with
down
more
by
trucks, we do
Garden.
run 3 out of Station 1.
Right, well, that's actually was my next question. So if you get a call in 2, you're understaffed, or even if you had your full regiment of 6 firefighters at Station 2, you're still gonna respond with the truck out of Station 1.
Yes, sir. Both stations do respond. It's just a matter that with only 6 people, we try to split it up between the 2 stations.
Right,
And with Station 1 having more trucks, when we're staffed at 5, then we make sure we run 3 out of Station 1 and 2 in Station 2.
right,
So, but they are still responding jointly.
right.
It's just a matter of that timing of the arrival, being able to come off the truck with an ample crew prepared to
Yeah.
fight fire.
And of course, the real issue there being if there was a train,
Yes,
which there are fewer now, there's little, significantly few, but that's still, and that will always continue to be an issue, but
yes, sir.
yeah, so those are good questions. You have some more, go right ahead.
I guess, you're talking about most of the trucks being out of recommended or older than it's recommended. You also obviously have some of the staffing issues that you're bringing up. What would you say are the most urgent needs for our department?
Staffing, as well as apparatus replacement. With the aging fleet, again, it doesn't do you any good to have the trucks if you can't get them out the door. So again, the staffing being the priority, and then the replacement of the aging fleet. One of the things that myself and the manager talked about is that we can replace some of our aging apparatus with a different style of apparatus for a response and do away with 2 trucks and replace it with 1 and still meet that need in some certain situations. So be able to, that reduces some of the maintenance costs on the apparatus as well because you're downsizing your fleet and still adequately responding with a proper fleet.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
So Chief, you have a question?
I do. What would you consider to be adequate staff?
Minimum of 4 per person on the engine companies. So,
And you're short on that in Station 1 as well.
Station 1 and Station 2, yes, sir. With our authorized staffing being 6 for full-time, we run 3 and 3 at each station.
Yeah.
So we're short 1 on each apparatus right now, Colonel.
Have you, do you have, and I understand that you yourself have done this, but do you have other members of the fire department that have served, that have had to do extra shifts because you're understaffed? I understand that you've sometimes have done some 24-hour ones because of understaffing.
Yes, sir. For the safety of the personnel and providing a level of service to the communities, it's my recommendation and my belief that we will not operate with less than 5 people on duty, which in turn means that there are times that I have to cover a 24-hour shift just to be able to meet that requirement. So whether it be somebody calls out sick unexpectedly, especially during times where we had COVID quarantine, there were times that I had to work 24-hour shift based off of staffing.
Yes.
And that is to be able to provide
Right.
a level of service to not only the citizens, but a safety level for our staff.
So is it, so it's just so we can make sure we can all understand in the public as well, are you adequately staffed if everyone is healthy?
Not according to the National Fire Protection Association recommendations. Our current staffing, what we authorized, would be 3 and 3, where their recommendation is for 4 and 4 on each engine.
Okay.
So we would still be below that staffing.
So you're 3 and 3 and what is it? What's
The
the
National Fire Protection Association
standard is one more per truck, per
Yes, sir.
shift.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
All right. Thank
Sir,
you,
thank you,
Chief.
Mr.
Always. We
Yes, sir.
appreciate you very much and all you do
Thank
and
you.
what your men and women do. All right, Josh, you got the consent agenda.
All right, consent agenda, you have adoption of minutes on here. That is the January 7th, 2021 agenda workshop, the January 11th, 2021 regular session meeting, as well as the January 14th, 2021 special called meeting. Item B is a call for public hearing to close a portion of unopened platted portion of right-of-way parallel to Fairway Drive and Tomahawk Avenue. This would be public hearing on April 12th. Item C is also a call for public hearing to close a portion of an unopened platted portion of right-of-way parallel and between Hiwassee Avenue and South Okanichi Avenue. That public hearing would be on April 12th as well. And finally, you have D, which is a call for public hearing for text amendments to Chapter 1 or In our land use code definition section, this is to add some definitions to our current land use code. And that'll be your consent agenda.
Very good. Are there any questions for Josh on that? If not, I'd entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Very good. Any other discussion? If not, let's roll call.
Ryan Stone, aye.
Archie Petrilla, aye.
Tim Raines, aye.
Doug Hay, aye.
Pam King, aye.
Very good. Thank you. Josh, do we have any citizen comments at this time?
No, sir.
And we have no unfinished business, and our new business at hand is Riverwalk Greenway alignment.
So we've talked about this multiple times in the past, and I think I kind of left it last that we run into some issues with our proposed alignment on the banks there of Swananoa, back in behind the Center Avenue back in there. And what we have tonight, we've done some analysis, looked at a few different alternate routes for potentially moving that section of the Greenway. And we've got Fred Grogan here, who is our, I want to call you engineer of record for Michael Baker Engineering, and he's gonna lead us through this conversation.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I feel weird about sitting down. I guess I can do that. Is that okay? See you over there. It's been a long time coming. We have been doing a lot of work on this. I know that Josh and Jessica have kept most people abreast of everything. So give me just one moment to log in here. And I won't bore you too much with these details, but I figure it's good to have a map in front of us. We can at least take a look at it. So I think it's important before I get started here that just give you a quick background on the project. It's everyone's intent. We definitely have a signature project opportunity, full of challenges, and anytime you're on the river corridors like this and you're dealing with hydrology and structures, it's quite a challenge. We recognize that going in. And one thing I think is important to bring up is that typically with a DOT project, we are federally funded like this. There's a procedure that you go through for reviews with DOT. Usually you don't get to a hydro review or a structure review till around a 60% completion of the project. So with this project, we actually intentionally engaged structures and hydro early, because if folks here can recall, the project was going to go under Highway 70 and go under Highway 9. For about 5 years before we got engaged with this project, DOT continuously denied that underpass on Highway 9. So we felt it was important at the beginning to pass that hydraulic. And so we were able to achieve that. To get under 9, use the existing culvert with a jack and bore operation, but it still passed. And because hydrology was engaged early, we had them look at the entire project. So that's setting these bridges back behind the Bilo and behind the Friends Meeting House back over here off Center. So we're looking at, I know you can't see the schedule, but I just want to show you the whole project. There's a lot here. We basically got to about right here, which is about a 60% design, and realized that a flow mark cannot be accepted, which is a conditional letter of map revision, which means you change the hydrology a little bit, but you can do a revision to that map. And we were getting in a 10-year and a 5-year storm about 3 inches of rise over one building in that area. And I think the town should appreciate this. DOT would not allow that for liability reasons. It would be imperceivable to have a 3-inch rise in a 10-year storm. But because we can't model that and show that is a no rise, then that's DOT would not allow that. So that's kind of where we are now. And it's important to bring up that we are looking at some options. And I think that's, it's good to really be here and talk with you guys. It's been, we've been working on this for a couple of years now. And we've had a lot of progress, but unfortunately now we're looking at some alternate routes. So for orientation, I know everyone's aware of this area around in here is always, the green that you see was the route that we were originally going. It actually navigated Norfolk Southern Railroad. We were doing a culvert underneath that railroad, which is quite an extensive challenge. And this is the area right in here that we started to run this hydrology issue. So now what we're looking at are some options. This is Scotland Center and Ridgeway and Sutton. That's one option, and then the other one being actually utilizing existing pedestrian infrastructure sidewalks along US 70 down Richardson by the post office down the side. So talking with Josh and Jessica, there's also a thought of, we recognize that anytime you have a STIP project through federal highway funded project, there's inherent, just the process is very slow. You've got to be extremely patient with that process. There's submittals, there's all kinds of coordination. We had actually finished the categorical exclusion on this project. And so that's a whole level of involvement. So what we were tossing around here is possibly, and this is with DOT's buy-in, of course, and the town's approval, is possibly taking a piece out of this project that is held up by that step. Because everybody, us, and I know Josh and Jessica are interested to get something on the ground, and I'm sure you guys are too. We got to start showing some progress. And if we included this northern section in that and kept it in the step and went on these routes, it would still be a lot of time because it would have to catch up with the rest of the project, if that makes sense. So we did look at these options, and the purple that you see here, basically what we're looking at, and I will say this too, that the Riverwalk project being an off-road, multi-use path was the vision. And I think now what we're looking at may not be that experience from a user perspective that we were hoping. It would be an on-road combination of either shared roads, which are the stenciling on the roads for bikes, and sidewalks. The objective here, other than user experience, is to get people from point A to point B safely. And the objective was to connect to the Oaks Trail down by Montreat. So the Scotland Avenue, it's a very low volume condition, other than when you get to Ridgeway, and I think people probably know there's that hill that's going to be visible. Visibility is not very good on that hill. So that would require some kind of sectioning of sidewalk. And not to mention that if we kept Scotland Center and Ridgeway in the step and continued on with that as an option, we reopened the category exclusion. There's houses there that are older than 1970, which is 50 years old, which is insane. And they have to engage SHPO at this point now because they're over 50 years old. So that's a level of complication and time. So we started looking at, well, can we just look at something simple along Ridgeway Center and Ridge in Scotland, and then use the existing infrastructure on 70 in Richardson. So that's kind of where we are now. We in fact have a meeting scheduled with NCDOT Bike Ed Division on Thursday to discuss,
may not be as straightforward as we think. There's improvements that have to be made to make it ADA. Some of the sidewalks that are out here now are falling apart, and the ramps are not in great shape, so. But we really want to see what they have to offer and how supportive they are of this option, and then what that might imply for the project. There is a silver lining that the initial route that we were looking at was not inexpensive. We had 2 bridges. We had to cross under Norfolk Southern and go under Highway 70. And we're looking at about $1.5 million in savings now if we don't go that route. So it's definitely good news for the town's match, and if we can still get a connection to happen. So we're also looking at one of the kind of things that came up this past week that we discussed. This entire time under Highway 9, the reason we pushed so hard to get that culvert to be used is because the entire alignment was off-road. And we didn't want to come back at grade to cross Highway 9 because it was unnecessary to bring people to the road at that point. However, now that we're looking at basically on-road sections, we can still get Highway 9 to work, but should we? Is the question. Should we put people, it's a safe condition, but we do recognize the town will be responsible for an MOU with DOT to clean that culvert on occasion, which is a long-term commitment for the town. It will flood on occasion, so that would render the connection temporarily useless while it's in flood condition. So one of the things that we're looking at and thinking about now is actually advanced in part of bylaw is really improving that intersection to make it safer, and then making that connection back through Vance to tie this thing in. So that's really all I have to share unless I missed anything, Jessica or Josh. And of course, questions.
Yeah, questions, board?
Yeah, absolutely.
Nice to see you again, Fred.
You too.
Did the Greenways Commission weigh in on this? Have they rendered their thoughts about it?
They have not.
Is that,
We wanted this board to see it before anybody else saw it.
right?
Well, but we're gonna need, this board, I think, still needs to hear the feedback from DOT and some more information. And I guess this would be the question for the board. Personally for me, it appears because of the issue with crossing the creek, we're not gonna get there if we continue on that current path. So it has to be these configurations in some way, or I just don't see how we're gonna get there. Is there anybody who doesn't feel that way?
Well, I guess I don't fully understand, because we're talking about existing roads and existing sidewalks, right?
Correct.
So what are we actually gaining by going one of these routes? Because, right now you could bike that route, right? And what?
You can. The only thing you're gaining really is to improve these conditions that currently don't meet, codes, separation of bike and pedestrian, things like that. So you are utilizing existing infrastructure. I'll say we did look at some options on Scotland. This might help actually explain your question a little bit. I did have an exhibit here. So, for example, we were looking at some of these options for Richardson and Scotland, and basically creating bike lanes on the uphill section, a separate sidewalk on aside from that, which essentially makes a complete street, is what that is. But the only challenge to this is that there are no sidewalks on Scotland or Center currently. and that you would have to engage in potential encroachments on properties, depending on we don't have a survey on that one, Scott, yet. We don't know what the right of way is through that section. But we're assuming that there will be some temporary encroachments, minimal, on those properties. And then, of course, SHPO again have to be engaged. But that's just creating separation. And I think, to your question, the intersection at 70 and Black Mountain Primary would be enhanced and improved with flashing beacons and crosswalks. And then the pedestrian existing sidewalk would be used. And the roads themselves would just have sharrows on them, basically indicating they are a bike travel road, as opposed to the way they are now. That's,
Now, to help me with this, Fred, if one difference, it's my understanding, is in the concurrence on this, if you, and of course, it takes DOT's blessing because of the complexity of using these funds, but to use those funds, they have to approve it. And then it becomes, in essence, if you did this, DOT approves it, we are able to use these STBG funds to do it, to fund it. It's 80% their money, 20% ours. It then becomes part of the Fonta Flora trail system, where it wouldn't otherwise. And that's a pretty important thing, right? Am I correct?
So that was one of the other questions I had. I mean, this isn't a question, it's a comment. And it's not a criticism of anybody, because I know that people have been trying for years about this. But I have to say I'm enormously disappointed. If it's going to be the centerpiece of the Fonta Flora Trail and also the Hellbender Trail, people don't drive to a new community to hike or bike so that they can walk down a sidewalk through the middle of Black Mountain. It's just a real disappointment.
It is, it's what we have. It's
I
a
know,
reality.
It's not to say
Yeah.
that anybody has dropped the ball. It's just
Right,
really unfortunate.
Right.
It's just not what we've been dreaming of for quite some time. I'd also mention that I feel like the Greenways Commission should be utilized in an advisory capacity. That's their job, right? Just like we've used the planning board and so on, and going forward, I think it'd be important to include them in the loop.
right. I think this was an unusual aberration, normal practice. That is the case. I think because of the critical nature of the timing on this, Josh wanted to bring it to the board first, but we fully want to take it to them and get their input on it.
Sure.
And we have time to, because we still don't have, as you can see, all the information that this board needs to make a decision. But this board, like I said, I don't know what options you have
I know.
other than to move forward and to bless the work that's done so far. Fred's going to speak to NCDOT and to see if they're moving forward on it. I do think that the Riverwalk project has, it's still in the pipeline. We did not, other projects got delayed more so than us, but we're still in pretty good shape with this project if we can kind of pull it together a little bit. And DOT is now getting some funds back into their cash balance is up better, and so the timing is now maybe becoming a little more critical on us being able to move forward with the plans on it and so forth.
and I will add, the commission is aware of the challenges of the hydrant, and that route was no longer able to launch.
Right,
It's just these alternate routes that we're talking about now.
right.
That needs to be
And they knew that alternate were coming as well.
done.
Yeah.
So this could be looked at as a short-term solution. I mean, short-term in Greenway years is like a long thing too, but.
I don't think so.
What might be.
I don't think so. The difficulty of getting these funds and just the competitive pressure of getting them, we were fortunate to have them and have the opportunity that we do. And not, you never know. I mean, I can't forecast the future, but I'm chair of the MPO board right now. And it's, the battle for funds, and it's not a battle, but the tension that's there for funds is, it's never ending. And for these funds, these local project funds, it's, City of Asheville and Buncombe County with budgets much bigger than ours. And the utilization's, different. And that's always the struggle. Some of our smaller communities, we try to prioritize them, but it's difficult. It's very challenging. So it might be a little bit unrealistic to think that you're going to get another shot at it very easily with this amount of local project funds. And I'll leave that to these folks that deal with it more to respond to that if that's not a fair statement.
No, I think that's a fair statement. I don't know that we've gotten this specific answer back yet, but I think we are under the impression that these types of funds would not be used to buy property. And I'm talking about the property that's affected by the rise. So, if the town decides they want to go this route, then I think the answer is we buy that property and we continue and we push forward. But, that's a decision for y'all to make. But, with staying the original route, we've got to figure out how to buy that property. That's the option. Because it has to be,
Behind bylaws.
it has to be in our hands.
Well, it's where the Friends building is there, and it's, the appraised values, and it's more than one piece of property, isn't it? Three or four pieces. Does it appraise property tax,
Over a million.
assessments around $1 million?
So that's definitely always been, you can have a no-do option or a full loan option, and that's always been on the table for a full loan option is, free property acquisitions and, towns that have been interested in any kind of condemnation type situation. I think it would have to be an animal.
Yeah, I would think so. Any other questions? So we'll look forward to hearing back when you.
Yeah, we'll
Have some
do our
details.
behind the scenes work and then we'll.
Did you have anything you wanted to add, Jessica?
I just wanted to note that even if the funding were to be available, it would still have this condition on it. This no rise condition is, what we're tripping up on under these federal rules. So there's that, and Josh, you might be able to speak to this, but I think that even if we remove the northern section from the DOT project and do it as a town project, which we split lots of hairs here, I definitely appreciate that. I think we can still designate that onto Flora.
Of course you
It
can.
doesn't have to be
Sure can.
DBG money in order to do that. So we would still be good on maintaining our connections with the state trail. I commiserate. It is hugely disappointing, but it's what we have to work with.
Yeah. Anybody else?
If I could just have one clarification, Mayor Harris, you mentioned that the Riverwalk is still underway,
The Riverwalk funding
the funding.
has not been, some projects have been delayed out years. But we are not, and Jessica, maybe you can speak to it a little bit more intelligently than I can, but we're still on the shorter list. We're just one of maybe two locally funded projects that are still, it's still there for us. And everything's been delayed, but it'll come back online soon. But, their funding's kind of coming back around a little bit for DOT. Their numbers are, cash is up to over $1 billion, which is kind of the minimum. It's kind of what they need in case of emergencies and so forth, hurricane, whatever. But, they're not quite as hand to mouth as they were.
We just wouldn't be able to tie into it with the new plan? Is that what we're saying?
I think we're confusing the project with funding.
Right,
I think
that's
the
right.
mayor's talking-
Oh, you're
Right.
talking
Talking
project.
project.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah.
All right.
The project's been approved. It's just because of NCDOT financial stresses, everything was pretty much stopped, including these locally funded projects, including state highway, federal highway projects, everything. But everything is loosening up just a little bit. But we're just one of two, as I recall, locally funded projects that is not on the delayed list. It's just we're waiting on what happened, not to get out in the weeds too much, but what happened is the State Department of Transportation Board, statewide board. They met, and on the list of projects, it's a 10-year list, they simply had to go in and decide which projects were going to be delayed. Like the 26 connector, it was delayed to everything back about 2 years. Our exchange was delayed a couple of years. Some projects were delayed 5 and 7 years, 10 years, and so forth. They had to do that because the federal government stops all the money coming to the state once they hit a cash flow number that's too low, meaning that even current construction stops. And they certainly don't want that to happen because then it's just so costly to crank it back up. But the federal government somewhat closes them down if their cash gets too low. And that's what was in jeopardy of happening. And so a lot of projects got delayed, including these local projects. I mean, it's still money. There's a tremendous amount of money in these local projects statewide. It's, a lot. So anyway, that's kind of what's a little bit behind that. But yeah, there's two issues, funding, which is one of them, but our project is approved. It's just a lot of things that were approved and on the step were pushed around and delayed. Ours, fortunately, was not. Yeah.
Part of the reason that stayed on the step was because we were making progress and showing a lot of times would stall out and they would get cut or delayed. We felt fortunate to keep this thing going.
Yeah.
And it's a 80-20 match, as you're probably aware. So that's good. The money's still there. So that's the action.
Any other questions for Fred while we have him? Thank you, Fred. We appreciate it. We'll look forward to hearing back from you as soon as you get some news.
Thank you.
All right. So we're on for our public hearing. And I would entertain what we're going to do is we'll treat this just like the initial one, just to make it easier and allow for public comment if we have any. So I'd like to make a motion, I'd like to entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Right? Any discussion? If not, roll call.
Ryan Stone, aye. Archie Patillo, aye.
Tim Ryan's aye.
Doug Hay, aye.
Pam Kenny's aye.
Thank you very much. And staff and Attorney Sneed, just want to cover some additional information before we ask for public comment, if you have any.
You go first.
All right, so after last meetings, the discussions, we've, and I'll probably end up reading, I'm just gonna read this or summarize this email that was sent to us from the Director of Planning in Buncombe County, who was attempting to clarify the density calculations. So the R1 density is a maximum of 10 dwelling units an acre with a maximum of 2 dwelling units per lot. Here in Black Mountain, it's UR8, all right? So that is 8 units per lot. 8 units per acre. I think that the difference in that comes in where we allow duplexes as 1 unit. So technically, instead of it being UR8, I guess you could call it UR16 because they're getting 2 units per lot, if that makes sense. Does that make sense? So according to the county's email, it would be 10 dwelling units an acre, where ours would be 16 if you built all duplexes. Otherwise, it would be 8 units an acre. Okay, so I'm trying to clear that up to make sense. Does everyone understand that?
Yeah, it's really, the county does not allow the duplex.
They allow 1 duplex on a parcel or 2 individual houses, regardless of their size,
But not 2
but not
duplexes.
2 duplexes. That's correct.
Do you think that's where the confusion, do you think that's the best we can tell? Because there's been a lot of confusion on this topic for a long time. Attorney Sneed, did you have
It
something to add?
is because you get words used in the 2 codes slightly different. Or as we talk of a unit, might be a duplex with 2 living spaces. And I've defined it this week, just so I can see it in my head, is essentially the county's R1 allows lots of a size that allows 5 per acre. The town's allows 8 per acre, and the town will allow a building on that eighth of an acre, and that building might be a duplex, and I talk about it as two individual living spaces. The county zoning ordinance allows, they have 5 lots per acre, and each lot can have 2 living spaces on it. So if you quit using units and trying to mix that up, the end result is the same. We allow 2 living spaces per lot. County allows 2 living spaces per lot. Our lots are allowed to be smaller, more living spaces per acre.
Good for everybody? Okay, is there any other items you wanted to cover, just to reiterate?
So I think there were some discussions, and I'll let Attorney Sneed jump in on this one. I think there were some discussions about water availability for this parcel. We typically, in the past, I don't think we've, at least since I've been here, we haven't, if someone wanted water and we had the capacity and the adequacy to do that, we would sell them water. In this case, the Brooks Cove subdivision does have access to water, very readily available, as well as capacity. So I want to make sure that folks are aware that, whatever the decision may be from the town board tonight, they would still have access to water, whether or not they were in town or not.
Right, the ordinance requires that they make a voluntary annexation application, and it's this board's prerogative to accept or reject that application. But a rejection of that application does not preclude the availability of water.
Right. Anything else?
Got public comments.
Very good. All right, any public comments?
All right, this is from Tressie Mundy. We are against the idea of annexation on Brooks Cove Road. Oops. This is from Nathan Pageant. Town board and staff, thank you for allowing us to publicly comment. I officially make a request for this to be in the public record and read at the meeting. First, I do feel this entire situation could have been avoided with more transparency and accurate information so those involved can make a reasonable, informed decision. Per Buncombe County Planning Director Nate Pennington, R1 maximum density is described as 10 dwelling units an acre. However, he did define the intent of the ordinance, which is outlined what the term unit defines. I feel this is where the confusion sets in for most. For example, this could include a mother-in-law residence, a carriage house, or a garage basement apartment. He clearly stated the additional unit is not a lot. Therefore, the total number of lots available for sale would be 5 per acre. He also stated that multifamily units are not a permitted use in R1, and R1 is very much a single-family subdivision-based zoning district. Based on this information provided to the board, R1 density would be 5 units per acre and or 10 dwelling units per acre. The town of Black Mountain UR8 zoning allows for 8 single-family structures and or 8 duplex 2 households under 1 structure, which classifies as multifamily and would equal 16 households or residences. Town attorney Ron Sneed alluded to this in the agenda meeting Thursday. Therefore, UR8 allows for more density than the county R1. Also, the fact that UR8 allows duplex structures is alarming and R1 does not. The square footage of each lot reinforces this point. UR8 is 5446 square feet per lot. The county R1 zoning is 8,000 per lot. That shows the density. Based on the facts mentioned above, I believe it would be in the best interest of the town to not annex this property. Without an approved site plan, a developer could develop as they see fit, as long as it falls under the UR8 guidelines. R1 is clearly more restrictive and prohibits that future growth. There are way too many red flags and uncertainties with this entire situation. We want the best for our neighborhood and home place. We encourage you to vote against annexation of this property. We appreciate your time and service to our town. This one's from Steve Pageant. I would like to express some concerns regarding the requested voluntary annexation of land, 16.5 acres, the PIN number 06198863530000, located off Brooks Cove Road, owned by Mr. Honeycutt Jr. This property is adjacent to land owned by Robert Paget, located at 152 Brooks Cove Road, that is in Buncombe County. The requested property is annexed and rezoned UR8. The property located at 152 Brooks Cove Road will be surrounded by town limits. Wouldn't this be considered spot zoning with potential legal consequences to the town? The consideration of a major development, adding 50+ homes, will impact this street tremendously. Brooks Cove Road is not wide enough for 2 cars to pass and poses safety concerns. This road is not adequate to accommodate a major development and will have issues during the construction phase. Where is the second access into this property, which will provide the necessary ingress, egress needed for unmajor development if one is built? Question mark. There has been a lot of discussion about county R1 zoning versus town UR8 zoning, with little explanation other than being told UR8 is more restrictive. When trying to educate ourselves about R1, we were directed to Buncombe County. When forced to do our own research, we believe R1 is more restrictive than UR8 due to R1 being a single-family subdivision based on zoning requirements, 8,000 square foot lots, which is 5 lots per acre. If this is going to be a single-family development, then R1 appears to be more restrictive. The town's UR8 zoning, which is 8 lots per acre, will allow larger clusters and multifamily duplex units to be developed per acre. This will leave room for more development to be completed in future phases, thus causing an increase of stormwater runoff that cannot be mitigated with retention ponds. Based upon road infrastructure, neighborhood identity, and zoning requests, we are against this property being annexed. We only want the best for our neighborhood and are trying to stand up for the folks in our community. We're not trying to be difficult. We just want clear transparency with reasonable controlled growth. We appreciate our elected officials and town staff for your service. Kate Shalgo. Dear Black Mountain Alderman, residents are counting on you to make a wise, fully informed decisions about the annexation on Brooks Cove. Get a committed site plan first. Be sure the infrastructure is in place to support the proposal. Residents of Curly Heights Road and Ruby Avenue have had firsthand experience with increased traffic and excessive stormwater runoff after condos were constructed in the 400 block of Curly Heights Road. It took over a year of combined effort from the town, Curly Heights Baptist Church, and a landowner to remediate stormwater flooding at 202 Ruby Avenue after the condo parking lot was paved. Housing is needed, change is inevitable. Let's be sure we can sustain the changes without harming our established community. Lisa Milton, petition for voluntary annexation for PIN number 0619886353 was filled out on October 13th, 2020 and signed by all the property owners on November 6th and 7th, 2020. The hearing was scheduled for the November 23rd Planning Board meeting. None of the surrounding property owners were notified of the November 23rd hearing for annexation. No notice was posted on the property. No notice of the meeting. The property owners were unaware of the meeting and the consequences annexation could have on their properties. Special call meeting for the planning board was scheduled for December 15th to hear a rezoning request. Surrounding property owners received a letter on December 14th advising them of the planning board rezoning request. Hearing for PIN number, the same PIN number on the following day. No notice of this rezoning request was posted on the property. The annexation and rezoning request will allow a greater density. Under current R1 zoning, the minimum lot size is 8,000 square feet, allowing 5 lots per acre with no more than 2 single-family dwellings per lot, resulting in 10 family residences per acre. While the annexation and zoning change to UR8 zoning, minimum lot size is 5445, allowing 8 lots per acre with 1 single-family home or a 2-family duplex lot, resulting in up to 16 family residences per acre. The zoning change would result in a potential 60% increase in density. The annexation would also result in PIN number 0619884704 152 Brooks Cove Road being spot zoned because it would retain the current R1 zoning while every property around it becomes UR8. The town should also remember that protecting the public interest means protecting the interest of even those who not only do not reside in the town and have no desire ever to do so. None of the surrounding property owners were allowed to participate in this process from the start. Their opinions and questions they may have had were not heard or addressed. For open and transparent governing to occur, every citizen must have equal participation in the whole process, start to finish. Property owners did not have a voice in this process, and now have the ability now you have the ability to be their voice. Zoning gives each property owner an expectation of regulations that serve to protect the value of property. The code applies equally and uniformly to all citizens. For this to work, equal participation must be afforded to every property owner as well. The board will be well advised to consider carefully the advantages and disadvantages that annexation offers and the leapfrog development that it can engender. Thank you for your consideration. Kirsten and Weston Hall. Dear Mayor and Board of Aldermen, we begin with our question asked at the last BOA meeting. What are the current and future plans for this town with regards to development? ? We know the focus tonight is Brooks Cove, but this situation has played out too many times in our town over the years. Developers propose an area, and what happens is always, number 1, there's no affordable housing built. Number 2, there are no regards for viable stormwater systems. 3, neighborhood traffic loads are stressed. 4, properties are clear cut of valuable trees. And number 5, new builds don't fit existing neighborhood models. And that's it.
Is all of them?
That's all of them.
Is there,
If I may, Mayor?
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, I have, Brian brought something to my attention that seems to be a concern among people that I thought we'd addressed to some degree at the last meeting, but deserves revisiting, is this is a two-step process that you're looking at tonight. First is just whether or not you annex. And then if you do annex, then the question is, how do you zone? Do you take their request to zone to UR8 or do something different? And the concern of the people out there who are not used to the process, they want to know, well, how does the town decide all this without having a site plan? How do you know what's going to happen on the property? As we discussed, we don't know. And the developer's under no obligation to tell us. And if he did tell us, he would be locked into it. And at the agenda meeting, we addressed this a little because probably a year from now, after your land use code is updated to fit the new Chapter 160D, you're probably going to adopt a process known as conditional zoning, which is site specific. And the developer would come in with a 16 acre and say, will you annex me and will you, this is the plan I want, and you can work it out. You don't have that ability now. So this board is stuck, annex or not annex, what are the considerations? If you do annex, how do you zone? And if you do zone, what do you have to look to? And you have to look at probably if we rezone, is it acceptable that this have the highest and most dense use? Without regard. The developer's representative tonight may be able to tell you some things about the property that takes some of the edge off of that highest and greatest use. But you have to be thinking about 8 lots per acre, 16 units per acre. In the opinion of this board, that's as far, that's what you got to work with. You don't have a site plan. You can't require a site plan. If you did, the developer would be locked into it.
very good. Thank you. I think I probably need to close the public hearing.
Unless you're going to hear from the
Do you want to
developer.
speak, Jesse?
I wouldn't mind saying one or two.
Can we do that? Is that good, Ron?
Yeah, part of your public hearing.
And I'll be very brief. Jesse Gardner, Civil Design Concepts, basically project engineer. Keep it high level of this is a zoning matter and an annexation matter. I kind of come back to a lot of talk about density. I come back to we're happy whether we stay county and develop under county guidelines, or if you guys decide to annex, I would ask that you annex to what we requested, which was UR8. I mean, that's sort of what we put in front of you, and honestly, we're happy either way. I've met with the neighborhood. I plan to work with them either scenario, and so that's pretty much it from our regard. And I'm happy to answer any other questions.
Thank you.
If you so move.
If we're going to do questions, that would come after I close the public hearing, Ron.
You're gathering information, so I think if you have questions for the engineer, well, that's still part of your public
Okay,
hearing.
so questions for the engineer? Maybe there are none, but any, you good?
I have a question, I'm not sure if it's appropriate for Mr. Gardner, regarding that donut.
Well, right now, we're in the public hearing, so it should be for Jesse, or then we'll close the public hearing and then ask for a question. I think that might be the way to do it. Sound good, Ron?
Yeah, if you're.
Very good, thank you, Jesse.
If it's information you need from staff, that still needs to be in the public
Okay,
hearing.
very good.
There was one thing I just wanted to review from the last meeting because it cropped up in several of the letters, and that was regarding stormwater. If a project were phased, and I don't know if this one would be or not, stormwater in our updated ordinance compliance has to be achieved by phase, not by the total project. And if you bought 10 acres today and you decided to build 6 houses, you have a stormwater permit associated with the impacts of those houses. And if 3 years from now you decided you wanted to build 2 more houses, but even that would have to be considered either to prove your existing infrastructure had capacity for that additional runoff, or you would have to design additional infrastructure to handle the additional water. So the idea of approving something and then adding on without additional infrastructure is not accurate.
Right. And the county does not have stormwater ordinances,
Not like this.
not like ours. Yeah, okay. Good. I'd entertain a motion that we close the public hearing.
So moved.
Very good. Ryan?
Ryan Stone, aye.
Archie Patroller? Aye.
Tim Raines, aye.
Okay, aye.
Pam King, aye.
Thank you very much. So, board, wide open for discussion. And your question,
Yes. Can somebody address, maybe Jessica could address the donut issue that Steve Padgett raised, and how that, you mentioned some concerns about being surrounded by town land and so on.
That doesn't prohibit it.
Doesn't matter.
No, if we were picking his little spot and rezoning it, yes, since it happens to be just because of the way it's located, it's not a spot zoning to have some leftover property in there.
So it's a non-issue.
It's a non-issue. It's an awkward looking situation, but it's a non-issue.
I think we just, since we twice now have shared incorrect information about that little spot, we're talking about that triangle there that is in fact county land and would not be part of Black Mountain property.
That is correct.
I have a question for, I think, Ron. Say we approve the annexation, but for some reason or not the UR8. Would we be liable in some way, or would there be any kind of repercussions from that from the landowner?
I don't know if there'd be repercussions, but I think just in the interest of being straightforward, if you
That's what I'm
don't
asking.
think it's gonna go forward with UR8, then don't annex and then pull the rug out from under them.
That's what
Because
I'm asking.
once you've adopted that, you're forcing them to go to the legislature to undo that.
That's what I'm
And
asking.
so, while you can't theoretically make the second decision like you made the first, I would advise the board to make the first knowing you weren't going to do the second, so that you could say now you're going to have less development than you had before.
Thank you.
Could we address the question of ingress and egress that one of the letters mentioned
That-
about a second entrance?
That's a site plan
All that
issue.
information will come in a site plan and will be a staff level review.
So this is essentially the last time the Board of Aldermen will have a look at this whole project.
I think
We're not looking at the project, but depending on how we vote tonight, it won't be coming before us again.
I think at some point in the future, it would come before you, if they decide to dedicate streets. But rather than that, that's probably gonna be about it.
It is a difficult decision just because of that factor in itself, and the fact that it's going to be the developer, according to their engineer, is going to move forward either way. And so the board has to weigh that as well. It's not to develop or not to develop. It's under which it's under whose stormwater regulations and so forth you're going to use, and density. There's going to be there's density is an issue, and it's as Ron said, you could ask Jesse any questions. He's representing the developers, but until you see the plan, and to be fair to him, there may be things that come up in the middle of it, and it's just what it would be. And so I know it's a difficult decision, and I would encourage you, if you feel like you're not ready to make it, there's no reason to just say so, but I don't know that you're going to have any more information to go on.
Sure, and Mr. Mayor, if I can, just share my personal views on how I'm trying to view this project as it's been presented to us. We know that as a community, we need some level of growth to maintain our low tax rate, to maintain the services and the people that we've got here. We also know that we don't want to interfere with the existing character of somebody's neighborhood. this project, as the mayor has said, is going to be developed one way or another. And we have to look at it, what would be more beneficial for us as a community overall? Would it be just to, certainly sell these folks some water? Or would it be better to integrate them into our community at a density that I think really between R1 and UR8, once they get in there and they start building roads and marking out right of way for that stream buffer, we're not going to look at a density that's as high as projected here. That number is based just off the total acreage and the maximum number of lots. That's just not feasible for what's really going to occur there. So, is it in the long-term best interest of this community to just sell this development water when we could integrate them into our area, have them be participating members? They're going to be using our roads, paying additional taxes to help build that infrastructure. They're going to be using our restaurants and whatnot regardless. There's going to be wear and tear. And, lastly, I'll say we get a lot of impact questions. Do we have the capacity? We do have the capacity. We have the capacity to sell them water, of course. We've got the capacity on our roads at this point with improvement in certain areas. And certainly, I think any of us that have been on Brooks Cove lately are in agreement that that's something that we want to do regardless. So from my perspective, it does make a lot of sense to bring them in, to integrate that into our vision at the UR8 level.
Thank you. Thank you,
Absolutely.
Alderman Stone. Thank you. Any other comments?
Just that I look forward to a time when we can require a site plan and look at it that way.
Do I have a motion?
Oh, Mr. Mayor, I would make a motion to accept the voluntary annexation request as presented in Ordinance 020-20.
Good, motion's made. Is there any other discussion or questions? If not, roll call.
Ryan Stone, aye.
Archie Patillo, aye.
Tim Raines, aye.
Doug Hay, aye.
Pam King, aye.
Very good, thank you. Motion passed for the voluntary annexation. And so we are now we'll have the public hearing on rezoning that property, just we've taken in under voluntary annexation. Is there any information that staff wishes to offer? I think we've discussed pretty thoroughly what the issues are, but anything to add? Motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
So moved. Mr. Stone.
Ryan Stone, aye.
Archie Patillo, aye.
Tim Raines, aye.
Doug Hay, aye.
Pam King, aye.
Thank you. Any comments? You probably made more so in the other.
Not online.
None online, none to be had. Mr. Gardner, do you have any? Very good. All right, motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Mr. Stone?
Ryan Stone, aye.
Archie Patillo, aye.
Tim Raines, aye.
Doug Hay, aye.
Pam King, aye.
Very good. Board, any questions, comments? Anyone care to make a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I would make a motion to adopt the zoning ordinance ZO 20-06 as presented and the statement of consistency as presented.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Stone. Any questions on that motion, comments?
Is that all right, Al? Okay.
Okay.
Archie Patillo,
Tim Raines, no.
Doug Hay, aye.
There's a question before she votes, yeah.
I would, tell me if this is an inappropriate question, but I would love it if, Alderman, Archie and Tim could elaborate a little bit on why they said no.
I just personally feel that they can get the same housing on the R1.
You just annexed them.
Mhm.
You just
We
add-
did.
They no longer have,
We annexed them.
they don't have R1 available to them.
Oh,
That's the annexation.
Okay.
so they're in the town, so they'll,
Yeah.
oh, okay.
So is there,
Can I change my vote? Possession?
Mr. Sneed?
Yeah, yes.
Archie Patrilla, aye.
Mr. Raines, would you still continue? You, just to recap, the first vote, we brought the property into the town. And so,
Now they're not R1.
Yep, I got it.
Yeah, I changed my vote also.
Okay, very good. Thank you. I thought that
Yeah.
may have been a misunderstanding.
It was.
Thank you. And so we have, let me just repeat now for the public and just for the minutes.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Stone is aye.
Archie
Mr.
Patrilla,
Patel,
aye.
aye. Mr. Raines, aye. Mr. Hay, aye.
Pam King, aye.
Thank you. Very good, thank you. Motion adopted, and is that good? Then the statement of consistency is included
It was
in the
included,
motion.
yes.
So thank you, board. I know that was laborious, and thank you for moving through that. Thank you, staff, and thank you to the public for all your interest and comments. Communication from staff, Mr. Sneed.
I have nothing. I will report that just today, we finally got the last of the easements for the antenna on the Mon Creek property so that they can read our water meters and send us bills down.
Josh?
So just a couple things, just want to remind the board and the public, we have a special call meeting to talk about the charter and, on the 18th of February at 8:30. And we will be sending out, as we mentioned in the agenda meeting, I'll send out a calendar invite for the first budget workshop in early March. We can try to get that on the calendar. And then just, I sent this to the board, I think last week, but just to get it out to the public. Back in 2014, we partnered with Land of Sky Regional Council and got some funding, I think through Pigeon River, if I'm not mistaken, as well as the Department of Water Resources or Environmental Quality, one of the two from North Carolina. But that helped us put together a Upper Swannanoa River Watershed Restoration Plan or Watershed Management Plan. That's a 9-element plan. It is now being used as an example plan on the state website. So I think that's something we should be proud of. And that is it for me, Mr. Mayor.
Very good. Board, any communications?
Can I get something clarified just for me?
Sure.
Okay, that was and I'm just gonna go back, so I don't make this mistake again, all right? So that was the reason for my question when I asked you, if we did not say we voted to annex, and we chose not to go URA as a board, would we be liable or in some way, to the owner and the developer? That was the reason for my question.
I don't think you would have been legally liable. I think there's a moral issue.
Okay.
But I'm sorry, I didn't understand that you didn't, I should have grasped that you were needing to know if they still had R1 available to them. And once we brought them into town, they lost their access to county zone.
Okay, so I got it. All right. So we had to go with URA, that's what you're saying.
You were literally telling them that's where we're going when you annexed them. And this is a weird one. I'm hoping a year from now, we don't have this kind of situation. Now that we're past it, I will tell you, if I'd been the advisor for the developer, I would have gone to the county with a site plan and I would have got it approved in R1. And then I would have come to the town and asked to be annexed. So if you annex me and did not zone me UR8, I would still have R1 available to me. But
Okay,
they hadn't done that.
okay.
There is a means.
All right. See, that's the piece that I was missing.
Yeah.
That's the piece. Okay,
Once we had it, we got it.
okay.
Very good. Any other communication for the public?
So for the special call meeting on the 18th, I know that Attorney Sneed has been working on some of the languaging, the proposed languaging for the town charter changes. Will that be made available to the public?
It can be, yeah. And I will tell you, looking, Josh sent me a copy of his markups, and he just simply X'd out 2/3 of the charter. And when you start looking at the provisions, you know why. Our charter probably could be a much shorter instrument. What I will do is pull out the archaics, or try to do, time runs all over me. I'm gonna try to pull out the archaic stuff and just say, let's just get rid of it. I'm gonna take this stuff that still applies in some fashion and give to you anywhere with the statutes also give you an alternate. And if you like the statute better, we're gonna pull that provision out. And then only write a charter that addresses the things that we want different from what the statutes give us. We should have a much shorter charter and not end up with these conflicts of laws that we've dealt with in the past, if that works for everybody.
So we'll still be in a work in progress probably on Thursday after our meeting.
Oh, yeah.
Right, any other comments, board?
Keep ordering takeout 21.
Every day.
Any other comments? Everybody, any other comments? The only thing that I would add, and this pertains to the budget, and we're looking at, I think as we've mentioned in maybe our last monthly meeting, looking at a budget workshop in March to give the board an initial look. And as you know, the county revaluations, revals are done. And so I've asked Josh to pull together, and it'll be kind of a work in process, but to work toward a revenue neutral budget, because that's the only thing we can do. I think, we're still going to have some growth in that from the prior year because the town has grown and we've had development, but there's never going to be enough money to satisfy all the needs. And I'm a proponent of the revenue neutral budget. And then that is your prerogative to work through that. If you want to raise taxes, it's going to take 3 votes if that's what you want to do. But we have to start somewhere. And I think revenue neutral is a good place to start.
Yeah, I absolutely agree.
Sound good?
Yeah.
Great, thank you. So, so we have a closed session. I'd entertain a motion that the board go into closed session to discuss personnel matters as permitted by North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11A6.
So moved.
Mr. Stone.
Ryan Stone, aye.
Archie Petrillo, aye.
Jim Ryan's aye.
Doug Hay, aye.
And,
Thank you. Thanks. Good night. Appreciate y'all.